Okay, so I'll go ahead and get started this morning by just officially welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap. Welcome to Wat Tung. Sawadee Kap. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, and we start with meditation in order to help you guys learn meditation and learn how to do meditation not only here at the temple, but on your own as well. And then after our meditation, we move into studying the original teachings of the Buddha. This is more of like a study group versus a class where I'm actually teaching. Can you guys hear me? You can hear me a little bit? There's a big event going on here, obviously, at the temple. We're actually live streaming as well, so the people on live stream are going to be able to hear the music as well. So all of you guys that are tuning in online, welcome. We're having a big event here at the temple. You're going to be hearing some music. Can you guys really hear me? Okay, good, because I can barely hear myself. You guys are welcome to move closer, or I can even probably turn up the speakers if we need to turn up the speakers. You need the speakers louder? Okay, for those of you guys online, I'm going to turn up the speakers here to give the people here at the temple the ability to hear me a bit more. Just one moment. Can you guys hear me any better? Okay, there we go. Okay, so as I was sharing, we do meditation in the morning, and obviously we don't have music every day. This is a special time of year, and they're having an event, so they're going to be having some music at different times. But I'll start with meditation, and even though there's going to be lots of music while we're meditating and lots of sounds, this is actually really helpful for you to train, where you can train your mind to not be distracted by sounds and things that are going on in the environment around you. So sometimes when I train my mind, I go into environments like this just to train my mind to not be affected by music or sounds or anything like this. Oftentimes when people think about meditating, they think about meditating in complete silence, which isn't permanent. You're not going to be able to permanently be able to have silence to meditate in. So meditating in places where there's sounds or lights or different things like this is actually really helpful for the mind. So I'll start you guys out with some meditation, and then we'll move into studying the original teachings of the Buddha. I will show you guys how we usually do that. So if you guys would like to join for meditation, I see most of you guys are all sitting on the floor. Those of you guys at home, you might be sitting on the floor in a chair or something like that. You would like to just make your body comfortable. The lower body, if you're on the floor, you can just cross your legs. And some people like to have multiple cushions under their rear. This gets the hips up in the air and lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. So you could always do that to be comfortable if you like, but there's other options as well. It's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees or their palms up. It's really whatever is comfortable for you. So the lower body and the hands and arms should be nice and comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be complacent or lethargic. But if your upper body is real rigid, the mind could have a tendency to be overactive and uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect, where the mind can be attentive and alert during your meditation. I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting. You guys probably will be able to hear it over the music. We'll see. If you would like to see the chants that I do, they're on a laminated sheet over there on the table. And you'll see the original Pali chants, and then you'll see the English chants as well. You guys are welcome to get those if you like. And these chants, they're not rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship or anything like this. It's just to help ease the mind into meditation and come out of meditation. It's not even prayer or anything like this. These chants were actually done throughout the lifetime of the Buddha in terms of chanting itself, because he helped people remember the teachings. So about once every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would chant, and this was a way to commit his teachings to memory. These chants, I suspect that his students probably created them either during his life or after his death as a way to honor and respect him. As you see, there's a lot of respect and admiration for the Buddha in these chants, and the Buddha wouldn't have created these himself. Buddha wouldn't go around teaching people to bow down to him and respect him, but his students, having learned how to move from the unenlightened state to the enlightened mind, they would have had a deep admiration and deep respect for him. And I suspect they created these either during his life or after his death. So for those of you guys that just came in, I shared earlier about this music is something that's not typically here. This is like a special event that the temple's having, and where you might often think that it's great to meditate in silence, you can't permanently have silence. You're going to sometimes have different sounds as you meditate. So this can actually be a real challenge for the mind to be able to meditate while there's so much sounds going on around you. So you can use this as a way to actually train your mind. So I'm going to guide you in meditation, and as you guys will find, the music will start and stop at different times. So we'll see how it goes. Train your mind regardless, no matter what's going on. You can train your mind to be peaceful and joyful no matter what's happening around you. So if you guys would like to join for meditation, make yourself comfortable, and I'll start with some chanting to ease us into meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Wat Tung Bhagavantang Apivatami Savakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Oto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match to the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Just wherever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาควาพุทธังมหาควันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาควาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสักขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Right, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I will once again welcome all of you guys, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to all of you guys. Those of you here at the temple and those of you guys online, welcome to all of you. We're going to do our very best to have class here, even though there's an event that there's a certain amount of sound that's coming into the classroom that's different than normal. But this is all just impermanence. This is a great metaphor for the Buddha's teachings, actually. The Buddha's teachings essentially are helping you to see that you can't control the outside world. It's not possible for you to control what other people do. All you can do is train your mind to be not affected by what's going on in the outside world. So if you turn on the news or your parents say something to you or your brothers and sisters do a particular thing, you can't control what other people do. All you can do is control your own mind. So when you're experiencing situations where, like here, we're typically in quiet and we can talk and have conversation and meditate and these kinds of things, but that quietness is impermanent. It's not going to be permanent to have permanent quietness. And there's going to be occasional times where there's going to be noise or different sounds. I've been teaching here for over 5 years, and this is the first time that I've had this situation where there's been music so loud during the time that we're actually teaching. But this is all impermanence because you can't permanently have an environment where there isn't sounds going on. But also the music is impermanent too. So if you have a craving, if you have a longing, if you have a yearning for quietness or a certain amount of sound or not sound while you're meditating or while you're in class like this, then when you hear sounds, you'll be frustrated or you'll be agitated or irritated. But if you can train your mind to let go of craving permanence, wanting things to be a certain way permanently, then you can get to peacefulness and you can get to joy. And of course, we would prefer to have this type of sound where there's no music, but occasionally there's going to be this. So we'll see what happens. We'll try to have class. And if it doesn't work out, we can always end class and just go on, okay? So welcome to Wat Tung. Welcome to our class today. And this is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the original teachings of the Buddha. It's not a traditional style of learning where usually like on Sundays and Wednesdays, and then of course when we have courses and classes and retreats, I'm usually just teaching and teaching and teaching, and then about every 20 or 30 minutes I'll pause and see if there's any questions from students. But today on Saturday is what we do is it's more like a study group where we study the original words of the Buddha. I invite a student to read a chapter. We actually have these chapters here that students will typically volunteer to read. And then after a student reads the chapter, I will open up to any questions that you guys have related to that particular chapter. And then after a student reads, then I will share some teachings on that chapter. Then I will open up to any questions that a student has. We have a few chapters here, and these chapters are actually quite short. Some of them are just a paragraph or two. This one is essentially about a page and 3/4. These are the original words of the Buddha where he's teaching you about the natural laws of existence. He's helping you to understand how the mind works, and he's helping you to understand how the world around you works. And you don't believe his teachings. You learn them, you reflect on them, and then you practice them to be able to see the truth for yourself. Through your reflection, you independently verify his teachings. The teachings of the Buddha, it's not about believe, and then hope something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning now, you're reflecting now to independently verify his teachings that they're true, and then you're practicing his teachings in order to train your mind. And because you're learning, reflecting, and practicing now, you actually see the results now in this life, that your mind becomes more peaceful and more joyful. By the time you move your mind to the enlightened mental state, there's no more frustration or sadness or anger, no agitation or annoyance. There's no guilt or shame or fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that is eliminated from the mind. No matter what's happening around you, you don't experience any of those discontent feelings because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are causing the mind to experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all those other discontent feelings. The mind can reside permanently peaceful and joyful no matter what's happening. And in order to accomplish that, you need to be able to learn, reflect, and practice to train the mind. With belief, you don't know what's true or false, so you're just believing it because somebody told you to believe it. But with the teachings of the Buddha, you investigate them, you examine them. And this is what you're awakening to. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment, you're awakening to the wisdom that is going to help you train your mind to be able to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. And it takes gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Meditation is part of the training that you do in order to train the mind to get to enlightenment. But there's other things you need to learn and practice besides just meditation in order to get the mind to the enlightened mental state. So when you're learning with the original teachings of the Buddha like this, you're starting to learn some of the other things that he taught besides just meditation to be able to get the mind to the enlightened mental state. So that's why this particular class, we study the original teachings of the Buddha. But in reality, all the classes and courses and retreats that I teach, they're all based in the original words of the Buddha, and I share some amount of the original words of the Buddha in all the classes that I teach because it's the original teachings of the Buddha that are help you to understand how to actually train your mind to get to enlightenment. So I share the original words of the Buddha throughout the various classes, courses, and retreats that I offer. And then I help students to be able to see what the Buddha actually taught so that you can then train your mind through his actual teachings. Rather than just what people say he taught, you can actually see the truth for yourself of what he actually taught. So if there's someone here that would like to read this, or anybody online in Facebook, if you would like to, online in Zoom, you can read the chapter here. And then after we read it, like I mentioned, I will share some teachings and then open up to questions. Those of you guys on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting those into the comment section, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. For those of you guys here at the temple, if you would like to read or if you'd like to ask a question, we have microphones in the bowl there, that white bowl. If you could just use one of the microphones, because the people online will then be able to hear you through the microphone. So is there someone here that would be willing to volunteer to read this particular chapter? Oh, Max, you're raising your hand. Okay. Looks like Max is going to volunteer to read.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Max.
Okay, on YouTube, this screen is very blurry.
Oh, it is? Okay. I noticed before I started live streaming that YouTube was saying that there was something with the live stream that was being affected. On my side, it's showing that it's been corrected, but maybe if there's someone if there's people in YouTube, maybe if you guys can hear me, you guys can maybe move to Facebook or Zoom and you'll be able to participate from there.
I can read this if you'd like, sir.
Okay, I'll turn up the volume here, Max. We've got some music going on. We'll see if we can hear you.
If not, you can take over and someone else could read or whatever. It's
okay.
5 future dangers in the way for consideration. Monks, there are these 5 future dangers in the way of reflecting on which the diligent, dedicated, determined monk, forest gone, ought to live just to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. What 5? The case of a monk who reflects thus: I am now young, a mere youth, black-haired and endowed with the beauty of youth in the prime of life, but there will come a time when old age shall touch this body, and when grown old in age, it is not easy to attend to the Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable condition comes upon me. Let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then, when I am in that condition, I will reside at ease even though I am old. This is the first future danger, to consider which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined for the attainment of the unattained. Again, he reflects, I have health and well-being, a good digestion which is neither too cold nor too heated, but moderate and suitable for striving. But there will come a time when sickness shall touch this body, and sick and ill, it is not easy to attend to the Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable condition upon me. Let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then when I am in that condition, I will reside at ease even though I am sick. This is the second future danger to consider, which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined for the attainment of the unattained. Again, he reflects, food is now plentiful. There has been a good harvest, and food is easy to get, and it is easy to keep oneself going by gathering. But there will come a time when there is a famine, bad harvest, and difficulty in a time. And in a time of famine, people will move to where there is plentiful food, and one will dwell in living conditions that are congested and crowded. It is not easy to attend to the Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable condition comes upon me. Let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then when I am in that condition, I will reside at ease, even though food is not plentiful. This is the third future danger to consider, which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined for the attainment of the unattained. Or again he reflects, now men reside in friendly fellowship together, blending like milk and water without disputes, but viewing each other with eyes of affection. But there will come a time of year, fear of robbers, and the people of the countryside will mount their vehicles and flee. Fear-stricken men will move away to where there is safety, and there one will dwell in living conditions that are congested and crowded. It is not easy to attend to the Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable conditions comes upon me. Let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then when I am in that condition, I will reside at ease even in a time of fear. This is the fourth future danger to consider, which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined for the attainment of the unattained. 5. Moreover, monks, the monk reflects thus. Now the community lives in a friendly fellowship together, finding comfort in one teaching, but the time will come when the community will be fractured, and when that happens, it is not easy to attend to the Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable condition comes upon me. Let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then, when I am in that condition, I will reside at ease, even though the community is fractured. This is the fifth future danger to consider, which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined for the attainment of the unattained. There are these 5 future dangers in the way to consider, which the diligent, dedicated, determined monk, forest gone, ought to live just to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized.
All right, thank you, Max. Appreciate that. So this chapter here, what the Buddha is describing are 5 things that can come in the way of you attaining enlightenment. He has other teachings that he shares, which is called the 5 hindrances, which are 5 kind of roadblocks or obstructions. But these are also 5 things that can also hinder one from getting to enlightenment. It's impermanence that can be experienced. So if somebody is not dedicated or not diligent and not determined to get to enlightenment, these are things like here, the first one is old age that he's talking about. The second one is sickness. The third one is when food is not plentiful. The fourth one is when people are not, in this friendship, or they're having difficulties in the community of the population where there's crime and different things that are going on. And then the fifth one is the community of people that are learning from the Buddha. When the Buddha was alive, they were together as one. There was just one set of teaching. But then after the Buddha died, there was these fractures where people kind of were splitting off on their own, and they were changing and modifying the teachings of the Buddha. And that was making it harder and harder for people to get to enlightenment after the death of the Buddha. So the Buddha is saying, okay, if you're interested in getting to this enlightened mental state, and you're interested in experiencing what that is, which is the peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy, eliminating all those discontent feelings, to get to this unattained here where he says, for the attainment of the unattained. So if you're dedicated and diligent and determined to get to that, then it's better to learn and practice the teachings when you're young, that when you have this vibrant mind that is more crisp and more sharp. By the time you get to enlightenment, even when you get older and you're in old age, your mind will still be crisp and sharp. Oftentimes we associate old age with a declining mental ability or declining mental faculties. But for someone who's trained their mind to get to enlightenment, their mind doesn't decline when they're old. So the Buddha died when he was 80 years old, and his mind was very sharp and very crisp because he had trained his mind. He had removed the pollutions out of the mind. And for a person who gets to enlightenment when they're 20, 30, 40 years old, as they age, your mind won't decline the way that you might typically associate with an older individual. So that's why the Buddha is saying here that when you're young, this is a great time to actually train in the teachings. There's really no bad time to train in the teachings, because I have students that they don't even know about these teachings until they're 60 years old or 70 or 80 years old. The oldest student I have is 100 years old. She's still studying, right? She started when she was like 98 years old, starting to learn the teachings of the Buddha. So there's really no bad time to actually start learning. But if you learn when you're young, your mind will have more capability to be able to learn and practice the teachings. And the same thing is true when you're healthy, when you have this well-being. Because when you're sick, it's going to be a lot harder to be able to learn and train your mind. Same thing that when you have lots of food, and it's easy for you to get access to food and maintain the health of your body through nourishment of the body, this is a great time to learn. And then when there's friendship in the community in terms of you're not living in a hostile environment or anything like that. And then when there's a set of teachings that are collected, like what we have here, we have the original words of the Buddha. These are just one set of teachings that the community can learn and grow, because these things aren't going to always be true because of impermanence. You're going to get old, you're going to get sick, you're going to have situations where maybe you can't get food so easily. Maybe you live in an environment where it's not so friendly and comfortable, and maybe you notice that the community of practitioners will fracture at some point. So the Buddha is encouraging people to remain diligent, determined, and dedicated to getting to enlightenment, because as things change in your life, it's not going to be as straightforward and easy for you to learn and practice the teachings during those times. You guys have questions on this particular chapter? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online either. So let's move to the next chapter then, which is chapter 12. By the way, this is volume 10 of the book series. I have this book series that I share that's 13 volumes. And in this program, we study volumes 2 through 13. And now we're in volume 10. It's a 1.5-year program that students attend either here at the temple or online. And there's foundational classes and courses and retreats that students will oftentimes take those foundational programs before they study in this program, because as I mentioned, this is more of a study group. And next week on Monday, I'm going to be starting a brand new course for 5 days, which is a foundational course to help you build a foundation in the path to enlightenment. And that starts on Monday at 9 a.m. And then we finish at 3 p.m. each day. And we take an 1.5-hour lunch break. And you can establish a really nice foundation for yourself in the teachings of the Buddha. And it's all at no cost. So you can access the books and the resources, the videos, podcasts, personal guidance, all of these courses and retreats at no cost. So if you guys are interested in learning the foundational aspect of the teachings of the Buddha and you're around next week, you can come for any part of that course that you like, Monday through Friday. And then on Sunday, which is tomorrow, I'll also be teaching as well. So if you have any questions on any of this stuff, you can talk with me at any point. I usually share this at the beginning of the class, but since it had a bit of sound coming into the classroom, I wasn't able to share it. But oftentimes students will have studied a foundational program before they come into this Pali Canon and English study group. But even if this is the first time you've ever studied the teachings of the Buddha, as you see, you'll get some benefit out of your time today, but it's just not the traditional style of learning that students will often have after they've already established a foundation and then kind of moving into a program like this. So is there somebody who would like to read this one, chapter 12? Yes, Kushi, please.
Do not decline, continue the struggle. 2 things, monks, I have realized: to never be complacent with skillful qualities and not to shrink back from the struggle. Without shrinking back, monks, I struggle on thus. Gladly would I have my skin and sinews and bones wither, and my body's flesh and blood dry up, if only I may hold out until I win what may be won by human strength, by human energy, by human striving. It was by diligence that I achieved awakening, and by diligence that I won the supreme freedom from bondage, enlightenment. And you too, monks, do not decline the contest, but struggle on, saying to yourselves, gladly would I have my skin and sinews and bones wither, and my body's flesh and blood dry up, if only I may hold out until I win what may be won by human strength, by human energy, by human striving. Then you too, monks, is in no long time shall win that goal for which the householders rightly leave home for homeless life, even that unmatched goal of righteous living, realizing it for yourselves, even in this very life, and having reached it, you shall reside therein. Wherefore, I say unto you, monks, thus must you train yourselves. We will not decline the contest, but will struggle.
Okay, thank you, Kushi. So here the Buddha is talking about this struggle, and what he's talking about is the challenge to be able to get to the enlightened mental state. While it's not easy to get to enlightenment, it's also not difficult either, but there'll be certain struggles along the way because the mind is kind of struggling with itself, because the mind tends to hold on to certain untruths and certain false opinions and false beliefs and things like this. And with the mind holding on so tightly, when you're learning teachings like what the Buddha shares with you about how to train your mind, that the mind can oftentimes struggle, especially if you learn about craving, desire, attachment, which is one of the first things you learn when you first come to the path to enlightenment. You learn about how the mind is causing its own anger, it's causing its own frustration and irritation. Oftentimes we think that other people are causing us to be angry, but what you learn on the path to enlightenment is your mind is causing these feelings itself, and that's why you can actually eliminate them, because your mind is causing the anger and the sadness and the frustration and other discontent feelings. And when you're training your mind to let go so that it can get to this peace and this joy, it can sometimes feel like a real struggle. And what the Buddha is sharing with you between the previous chapter and this chapter as well is to struggle on, face that struggle, walk towards that struggle, become dedicated and diligent and determined to train your mind. Because anything that you experience in life where you are struggling and you're having difficulties, this is just because you lack wisdom about how to deal with that particular situation. And oftentimes when the individual in the unenlightened state is struggling with any particular situation, someone might like turn away and walk away from the problem, or they might run away from the problem. And if you do this, you're just ensuring that that same situation is going to be recurring over and over and over and over again in your life, because you haven't taken the opportunity to cultivate the wisdom that you need to overcome that struggle. So what the Buddha shares and what I teach as well is, rather than running away from a struggle, is turn around and walk towards it. When you walk towards your struggles and you reach out to someone like me or other people in the community to get help and cultivate wisdom, sharing with us what it is that you're struggling with in life, if there's certain relationships or certain career decisions that you're having, we won't make decisions for you. We won't tell you what to do in your life, but we'll provide you the wisdom of the Buddha so that you can find the right answer for yourself. And then once you cultivate that wisdom with the struggle that you're dealing with, you can overcome that struggle. You can overcome that obstacle. And now you have the wisdom of how to deal with that situation. So when that situation reoccurs, you've already got the wisdom and you don't struggle anymore. You don't have difficulties. You can overcome that struggle. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't be struggling with anything at all. Your mind will be completely at ease and completely peaceful. You will have fully cultivated wisdom of how to deal with every situation that you've encountered. And now with that wisdom, you can just make your way through life with such ease and such comfort. But if you walk away from your struggles, from your challenges, if you run away from the challenges that you face, you're just ensuring that those struggles are going to continue. So what the Buddha is teaching you is to struggle on. But when you're struggling, that's where you reach out for help. help. Sometimes the ego is in there and it doesn't want you to reach out and get help. The ego is like arrogance and pride and boastfulness, thinking that, you're maybe so great, and maybe you feel diminished if you need to go to somebody and ask for help. But if you ask for help and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. My mom and dad have told me this, or my brothers and sisters are doing this, or my children or my life partner, I'm really struggling in this way. Do you have any advice or any guidance of how I can, overcome this challenge? And if you cultivate wisdom, you'll find that slowly over time, you'll experience less and less struggles in your life because you will fully cultivated the wisdom of how to deal with the various challenges that you're facing. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is that, if you're able to go through this life, and the Buddha is saying he would gladly have his skin, sinews, and bones wither, and my body, flesh, and blood dry up, if only I may hold out until I win what may be won by human strength, human energy, and human striving. What he's talking about here is the enlightened mental state. He says if he can just get to enlightenment, he would rather his body dry up in this way if he could just get to enlightenment, because then his mind will be so peaceful and so joyful. And that's the ability that the mind has, is to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. And of course, if you get to enlightenment, your body's not going to dry up and wither away, but he's just showing you that, hey, he'd rather this body do that if he could just get to enlightenment. Because once you get to enlightenment, there's so much peace and joy in the mind that you have no more struggles, like I talked about. So he's saying it was diligence that I achieved awakening, and by diligence that I won the supreme freedom from bondage. What he means by that is when your mind isn't unenlightened, it's bound up, that somebody can do something and you can just get angry at the drop of a hat perhaps, or you can get irritated or annoyed. It's not the other people that are causing your irritation or annoyment. The mind's causing it itself. But when your mind is unenlightened, it's not free. You're going to have those strong feelings. You're going to have that irritation, that annoyance, that frustration, or the guilt or shame or fear or other feelings like this come into the mind. But by the time you train your mind, it's now free. You have this freedom from these strong feelings. Your mind's no longer bound up. And that's what he's describing, that he awoke to this wisdom of how to train the mind and get this freedom from bondage, where the mind is bonded. And then he's saying, okay, to his students, he's saying, okay, strive on, continue to strive. And then he's talking about these household practitioners that leave home into homelessness. What he's talking about here is that during his lifetime, he would ordain people, either males or females, to wear the orange robes and shave the head and live a homeless life, where they would essentially, they don't have a home. They just go from person to person's house. What would happen is the villagers in the various villages would invite the monks in order to come live with them for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And then when they were living in their home, they would teach them how to train their mind with the teachings of the Buddha. So people would leave out of their own home. So like a husband might leave, or a wife might leave, or a child might leave. And then as they leave home, they come and study with the Buddha, living alongside of him and the students. And then this is them kind of letting go of life and letting go of holding on to a certain dwelling. You don't have to do this in order to get to enlightenment. You don't have to get ordained. You don't have to walk away from your family. You don't have to do those kinds of things. But this is one way that people choose to get to enlightenment, is by walking into ordained life, where you walk away from your life and you just focus on your own mind and getting to enlightenment. The Buddha did this. He left for 6 years from his family, but then ultimately he comes back and his family starts to ordain with him. His son, his wife, his mother, a lot of his brothers and cousins and brother-in-laws, they all start to ordain with him. But this is just one way to be able to get to enlightenment, is live in a monastery. It's kind of like the womb of a woman. The womb of a woman is the perfect place for a fetus to grow and develop. And the same thing is true about a temple. If you ordain, it's a perfect environment for an individual to be disciplined and learn and grow and develop. But you can also get to enlightenment from a household life too. You just need to train your mind, have more inner discipline and more ability to set aside time, because in the household life, you're typically really involved in significant relationships, you're involved in a career, you're involved in other things like this, and you just need to decide to set aside time to read the teachings, to meditate, to practice the teachings, to get guidance from a teacher. Whereas if you're ordained, you leave all of that stuff behind. You just have 100% of your time available to you to then be able to train your mind and get to enlightenment. Where in the household life, you still need to work, you still have significant relationships that you're maintaining, and you have other things that you attend to. So you can still get to this enlightened mental state from the household life, even more so than during the lifetime of the Buddha. During the lifetime of the Buddha, household practitioners were so busy just sustaining their life that they didn't really have as much time for learning and meditating. They had to think about like water. Like just to get water in your house 2,500 years ago, it was like an all-day event that you had to carry buckets from the well to your house and back and forth and back and forth. And you might have had to do that 2 or 3 times a week just to have water in your house. Where now we walk over, we open a faucet, and boom, we've got water. Or like food during the lifetime of the Buddha, they had to plant seeds, they had to nurture the seeds, they had to water the seeds, they had to take care of the plants, they had to harvest them, they had to bring the food in. There was a significant amount of work during the lifetime of the Buddha for household practitioners just to sustain their life. They didn't really have a whole lot of time to learn and practice. Even though household practitioners got to enlightenment during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was much more rare during his lifetime than it is nowadays. Nowadays, we have such conveniences in modern technology that we actually fill up our life oftentimes with unbeneficial things. We might do things that are unwise or unbeneficial because we have so much time on our hands, we're just filling it up with unbeneficial things. But if you set those things aside and you decide to read the teachings of the Buddha, come to the temple to learn, to meditate, and do all the other things that you need in order to train your mind, you actually have a better chance of getting to enlightenment today in the household life than they even did during the lifetime of the Buddha. So that's why the Buddha is talking here about people leaving the household life and entering into homelessness, because that's oftentimes how people got to enlightenment during his lifetime. But people still got to enlightenment from the household life during his life as well. Do you guys have any questions on this chapter? Okay. I don't see any online either. So we'll move on to the next chapter, which is chapter 13. Is there someone who would like to read this chapter? Josh, yeah, please go ahead. You guys can pass those mics around. There's a couple over there for you guys.
Final knowledge is achieved by gradual training. Monks, I do not say that final knowledge, wisdom, is achieved all at once. On the contrary, final knowledge is achieved by gradual training, by gradual practice, by gradual progress. And how does there come to be gradual training, gradual practice, gradual progress? Here. One who has confidence in a teacher visits him. When he visits him, he pays respect to him. When he pays respect to him, he gives ear. One who gives ear hears the teachings. Having heard the teachings, he memorizes them. He examines the meaning of the teachings he has memorized. When he examines their meaning, he gains a reflective understanding of those teachings. When he has gained a reflective understanding of those teachings, enthusiasm springs up in him. When enthusiasm has sprung up, he applies his will. Having applied his will, he investigates. Having investigated, he strives. Purposely striving, he realizes with the ultimate truth and sees it by penetrating it with wisdom.
Okay, thank you, Josh. This is a great chapter to help you guys understand that enlightenment isn't attained instantaneously. If there's anyone who's talking to you about the Buddha or anything else about instantly attaining enlightenment, it's just not possible. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Oftentimes, people think that the Buddha got to enlightenment instantaneously, that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. But this is his own words. He's explaining to you that final knowledge or wisdom isn't attained all at once. What final knowledge is once you get to enlightenment, the mind has acquired all the wisdom that it needs in order to actually get to enlightenment. So there's a whole path that you need to learn and practice with various tools and various techniques that the Buddha taught that are going to help you to get to enlightenment. And that's done through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, like what the Buddha is describing here. And as I mentioned at the beginning of class, you don't believe any of the teachings. You learn the Buddha's teachings, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and you practice them. So here, with the Buddha saying that this final knowledge or this wisdom to get to enlightenment is gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, you start reflecting on this and say, hey, is this actually true? Even though you know you're not enlightened yet, think about things that you've learned, whether it's learning to speak English or whether it's some job or some skill or some ability that you have. Was it instantaneously that you learned how to speak English? Or was it instantaneously that you learned that certain special ability or skill that you have with your job? Or was it gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress? Well, of course, it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress for you to learn English or any particular skill or ability that you have. So not only is the Buddha sharing that about this is what it takes to get to enlightenment, you can independently verify it for yourself that everything you've ever learned in life has been gradual. So this helps you to be able to see the truth that yes, even though there's people in the world that talk about the Buddha sitting under a tree and instantly getting to enlightenment, and they may even be monks, they may even be people who consider themselves Buddhist for 30 years, they may even be a Buddhist scholar who's an academic or a researcher, but if they haven't studied the original teachings of the Buddha and been able to learn them and understand them, they might not know the truth about what the Buddha actually did to get to enlightenment. It's a gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that'll help you to get there. It's not about learning something or sitting down and somebody giving you a bunch of beliefs and then you instantly decide, okay, I'm going to believe those same things. Instead, you're gradually learning teachings, you're gradually reflecting on them to independently verify them, and then you're gradually practicing them. And that's what brings you the progress of seeing the condition of the mind gradually improving, where you see more peace and more joy coming into the mind as it's starting to get closer and closer to the enlightened mental state. So then the Buddha gives guidance of how to actually acquire this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And here he's saying, okay, one who has confidence in a teacher visits him. And of course, he's using the male pronoun here, but you could easily substitute any other gender of pronoun here. It could be a female teacher too, right? The Buddhists just happen to use this pronoun here. So he talks in other teachings about how to gain this confidence in a teacher. He explains to you how to actually select a teacher. There's other teachings where he talks about that because you're interested in finding a teacher who's deeply understanding the teachings. And the way that you know whether a teacher understands the teachings or not is you look at their practice. You look and see if are they practicing the teachings? Are they kind and polite and friendly and respectful? Are they loving? Are they compassionate? Are they speaking with very clear mind? Are they concentrated and focused? Do they tend to be irritated and frustrated? Because if somebody's irritated and frustrated, their mind is not enlightened and they wouldn't be able to guide you to enlightenment. So the Buddha teaches you to look at the quality of somebody's mind, not in a judgmental way. You're not judging and putting the person down or putting them up above you, but you're just making a wise decision that, hey, if you're going to invest this time, effort, and energy to learn and practice the teachings, the Buddha gives you guidance on how to select a teacher. And he talks about having confidence in the teacher through kind of examining and looking at and questioning the teacher through understanding their mind and seeing is their mind concentrated and focused. He uses this term muddle-mindedness, and he says that, you know, if you're talking with a teacher and they have a muddled mind, that they're not practicing his teachings very closely, because by the time you get to enlightenment, not only is your mind peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, but you have focus, you have concentration, you have clarity of mind, you have deep memory. You're going to be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody in the world. You're not going to have this disgruntledness and hostility in the mind. So if you're interested in learning from somebody like that, you would be able to see that they would have personal, professional relationships that are very healthy and very vibrant. You'll see that the teacher is never in a bad mood. By the time somebody gets to enlightenment, they're never even in a bad mood anymore. So if you can see these kind of qualities in a teacher, then this will help you to develop confidence. And in this book series, the first volume In chapter 3, at the very end, I provide about 7 or 8 questions that you could ask a potential teacher to determine if they're enlightened or not. And this would help you to build this confidence that the Buddha is talking about. Then he's saying, okay, once you have this confidence, that you visit the teacher, right? Because you're going to need to visit the teacher. Nowadays, you can visit a teacher through Zoom, through a live stream, through coming to the temple, through meeting with a teacher at a smoothie shop or anything like this. There's lots of different ways to visit a teacher, right? But a teacher usually is going to have some location that they're teaching at, and you can visit that place. But then there's other ways to visit a teacher nowadays too. And then the Buddha talks about paying respect to your teacher, right? It's always nice to respect everybody in the world. Oftentimes we're taught, don't respect that person until they respect you first. Sometimes cultures teach you, like, don't respect people until they respect you first. Well, if everybody is practicing that, then nobody would be respecting anybody at all, because everybody would be holding back and reserving their respect until somebody else provides respect. Well, the teachings of the Buddha, you're not a follower. You're not going to conform to what other people are doing around you. And you start seeing the lack of wisdom in some of these things that we learn in our culture. So if you've been taught growing up, don't respect anybody until they respect you first, this is very unwise. Because if you understand the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result, whatever you put out, that's what's going to come back to you. So if you're interested in people respecting you, you respect people first. And when you respect people, then you're going to see all this respect coming back to you. But if you hold back your respect, or you hold back your friendliness, you hold back your kindness, you hold back your love, and you're not interested in displaying those things and practicing those things, people aren't going to have love and respect and kindness towards you. They're not going to be friendly towards you because you're not friendly towards them. So instead of holding back, what the Buddha teaches you is that you practice being respectful. And then as you practice being respectful to people around you, your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your teachers, here is what he's talking about, then you'll see all this respect coming to you as well. So it's always wise to respect a teacher, because in most settings, when it's related to the teachings of the Buddha, a teacher shouldn't be charging you anything. There shouldn't be a price to be able to get to enlightenment. A teacher is just helping you out of the kindness of their heart. They're helping you due to their compassion for you, the concern for your misfortune. So they're not getting paid to help you get to enlightenment. So if you went into an environment and you were disrespectful to a teacher, then this would be very unwise and not helpful to you. Whereas if you show up to an environment with a teacher and you're respectful to the teacher, then there's a mutual respect, not only from the student to the teacher, but from the teacher to the student. You should see respect from the teacher as well. And this creates a really healthy environment where you can then learn. Because remember, this teacher shouldn't have any motivation or hidden agenda other than just to help you get to enlightenment. That should be the only motivation that they have, is just to help you get to enlightenment. Because a teacher who's helping you get to enlightenment, they aren't going to be charging you a price or wanting your money or expecting anything from you. I know for myself, I can speak for myself, I have no expectations of the students whatsoever. If somebody would like to come here and learn and grow and develop, wonderful, I'm here to help that person. But I don't have expectations or requirements. I don't want anything from a student who's learning with me. But when a student chooses to respect the teacher, this is very wise, because then you'll see not only is the teacher respectful of you, but then you'll see that you'll be able to respect other people in your life too, like your parents and your siblings and things like this. So when you respect your teacher, the Buddha says, okay, you give ear, which means you're willing to listen to the teachings and you hear the teachings. And then during the lifetime of the Buddha, they memorized the teachings, because the teachings of the Buddha were oral. So everybody had to memorize the teachings. There weren't books, there weren't YouTube videos, there weren't podcasts during the lifetime of the Buddha. So they had to commit the teachings to memory. And this is how they were actually able to practice them. Nowadays, you need to at least commit the understanding of the teachings to your memory, but in terms of the exact teaching, you can reference books and things like this. So you need to understand certain things, like you're going to need to learn the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the 8-fold path, the 5 precepts. You're going to need to learn different things like this. And ultimately, you probably will be able to memorize those things, but it's not required for you nowadays to have as much memory of the teachings like they did during the lifetime of the Buddha. As I mentioned at the beginning of the class, I don't know if you guys could hear me, but 2 times a week, or once every 2 weeks, the students of the Buddha would come together and they would chant his teachings. So like I've been talking now for all of, I don't know, maybe about 45 minutes. And the students during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would remember every single word that he said. And then every 2 weeks, they would come together and they would chant his teachings word for word for word for word. This is how they memorized the teachings during the lifetime of the Buddha. So you don't need to go to that level of detail, but you at least need to get to the point where you remember the understanding of the teachings and the general practice of what you're trying to practice. But there will be certain teachings that you probably will commit to memory, like the core teachings, like the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, things like this. Okay? So then once somebody memorizes the teachings, or having studied the teachings, they examine the meaning of the teachings. That's where it's very important to investigate the teachings. The Buddha always teaches you, come investigate my teachings. He never says, believe my teachings. You'll never see that in the words of the Buddha. He never says, just believe me, just believe me. He says, come investigate my teachings. Because if you investigate them and examine them close enough, he knows that you'll get to enlightenment, because his teachings are the truth. And it's only a matter of time, if you investigate them close enough, that you'll be able to independently verify that truth. And then as you investigate the teachings, you start reflecting on the teachings to be able to understand them. That's the independent verification that you have. That's why I say learn, reflect, and then practice. That's how you transform your mind, is you learn the teachings, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them. That's how you get to enlightenment. And as you're learning and reflecting on the teachings, that's where this enthusiasm springs up. Because when you start learning the truth and you know that the teachings of the Buddha are the truth and you start confirming it, you're like, oh my goodness, wow. You get so much wisdom, and you get this enthusiasm that comes into the mind that you finally have figured out what the teachings are, to be able to train your mind to get to this peace and this joy that a lot of people maybe talk about, but it's kind of this elusive peacefulness or this elusive joy that people don't always know how to actually achieve. But if you learn the teachings, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and you start seeing the truth in those teachings, that's where this enthusiasm can spring up in the mind. And then when that enthusiasm springs up and you realize you're learning the truth, then he applies his will. This is like the dedication, the determination, the diligence to be able to apply those teachings in daily life and actually practice them. Then you investigate further. You continue to investigate the teachings, and you strive to implement those teachings in daily life in order to practice them. That's where the real transformation is happening in your practice. What the Buddha essentially did is he discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, and then he gives you the tools and the techniques of how to eliminate these pollutions from the mind. And as you implement those tools and techniques that he shares to eliminate the pollutions from your mind, that's where you start seeing the improvement to the condition of the mind, because you start noticing the peace and joy coming into the mind. So if you start striving by applying the teachings in your daily life, this is where you see the real results. What we sometimes say is that the role of a Buddha is to point the way to enlightenment, and then everybody else needs to strive, right? Because a Buddha can't give you enlightenment. Nobody can give you enlightenment. Your parents can't give it to you. I can't give it to you. Nobody can give you enlightenment. But through your striving, then you can actually train your mind to get to enlightenment. So what a Buddha is doing is they're pointing the way. They're essentially laying down lights along the path to illuminate the path to enlightenment. And then as each person decides to apply determination and dedication and diligence to strive, you can see the results for yourself as you train your mind and the condition of the mind gradually improves. And then purposefully striving, he realizes the ultimate truth and sees it by penetrating it with wisdom. So that's how you actually get to the truth, is by learning, by reflecting to independently verify, and then you practice. And this is how I summarize this particular discourse. The Buddha is an expert at showing this cause and effect, or action and result. Like when you do this, then this occurs. Then when you do that, this occurs. He does this all throughout his teachings. He shows this cause and effect. So he's showing you all the detail of how you get to wisdom and how you get to the accomplishment of awakening the mind to this wisdom. And then I kind of summarize it by saying, learn, reflect, independently verify, and practice. And that's how you actually get to the results of getting to wisdom and improving the condition of the mind. Any questions on this chapter? Looks like Josh has a question.
Where did you say the questions for the teacher were? Book 1, chapter 3?
Yes, at the very end of that chapter, there's about 7 or 8 questions, and then I have the answers in there as well, because there's questions like you can ask a teacher, like, is it possible to eliminate sadness, anger, frustration, things like this? And if a teacher says, no, it's not possible, that means that they're still experiencing sadness and anger. They're not yet enlightened. Or you can say, like, what are the types of students you accept and what are the type of students you reject? And if they say, oh, I reject these kinds of students, they're not enlightened yet, because an enlightened being is going to accept everybody and anybody who's interested in learning. Or you can say, how much does it cost for me to get to enlightenment? And if they're like, oh, well, I have this one package that's like 6-month package, it costs this much, and the 3-month package is this price. Well, okay, then they're not enlightened, because an enlightened being isn't going to be having a menu of services to be able to get to enlightenment. And also, a teacher can't guarantee you how long it's going to take to get to enlightenment. So if somebody's saying, you can get to enlightenment in 6 months, you just got to pay this fee, okay, that's a warning sign. So there's questions like that I put in there to help you be able to see how to question somebody in an inquisitive way, not a judgmental way, not an arrogant way. But if you're going to invest time, effort, energy, and resources to learn and practice, you would like to be sure the person you're learning from is pretty far along on the path, either enlightened or very close to it. And then that way, you're learning the actual teachings. Because if you were going to learn how to drive a car, would you be interested in learning how to drive a car from someone who's been driving for 20 years or 30 years, or someone who's never driven a car ever, right? You would be interested in having someone who's driven a car for 20 or 30 years, and then you have confidence that, I can learn how to drive a car from this person. Whereas if somebody's never driven a car, meaning they haven't gotten to enlightenment, how would they ever be able to teach you how to do that? So it's important to be sure to question a teacher and then observe their practice too, because they might know the right answers, but you would like to look at their practice and see how they're practicing the teachings. Any other questions? Okay, so let's move on to the next chapter. This is chapter 14. Someone like to read this one? Yes. Looks like Siddharth rose his hand, and then, ma'am, you can read the next one if you like.
To select the place to live, here monks, a monk lives in some jungle thicket. While he is living there, his unestablished mindfulness does not become established. His unconcentrated mind does not become concentrated. His undestroyed taints do not come to destruction. He does not attain the unattained supreme security from bondage, and also the necessities to sustain life that should be obtained by one gone forth. Robes, alms food, resting place, and medical care are hard to come by. That monk should depart from that jungle thicket that very night or that very day. He should not continue living there. Here monks, a monk lives in some jungle thicket. While he is living there, his unestablished mindfulness does not become established. His unconcentrated mind does not become concentrated. His undestroyed taints do not come to destruction. He does not attain the unattained supreme security from bondage, yet the necessities to sustain life that should be obtained by one gone forth, robes, alms food, resting place, and medical care, are easy to come by. The monks should consider thus: however, I did not go forth from the home life into homelessness for the sake of robes, alms food, resting place, and medicinal care. Having reflected thus, that monk should depart from the jungle thicket continue living there. Here, monks, a monk lives in some jungle thicket. While he is living there, his unestablished mindfulness becomes established. His unconcentrated mind becomes concentrated. His undestroyed taints come to destruction. He attains the unattained supreme security from bondage, yet the necessities to sustain life that should be obtained by one gone forth, ropes, arms, resting place, and medicinal care, are hard to come by.
The batteries might be going out on that one. Some more impermanence.
The monk should consider thus, however, I did not go forth from the home life into homelessness for the sake of robes, alms food, resting place, and medicinal care. Having reflected thus that monk should continue living in that jungle thicket, he should not depart. Here, monks, a monk lives in some jungle thicket. While he is living there, his unestablished mindfulness becomes established, his unconcentrated mind becomes concentrated, his undestroyed taints come to destruction, he attains the unattained supreme security from bondage, and also the necessities to sustain life that should be obtained by one gone forth, robes, alms food, resting place, and medical care are easy to come by. That monk should continue living in that jungle thicket as long as life lasts. He should not depart. In the case of selecting a certain village, town, city, country, person, similar discourses were spoken.
Okay, thank you, Siddhart. So here the Buddha is talking to the ordained practitioners about how to select a place to live, but you can actually use this for your life too. If you're interested in moving or you're curious about where the place you live, is it really meeting your needs, and you're trying to evaluate and make a wise decision about where to reside, this is actually guidance that can help you. The Buddha is talking about two different things. He's talking about the development of your mind, and he's talking about attaining the basic necessities that you need in order to sustain your life. And he's prioritizing the development of your mind. So the first part of each one of these paragraphs, he's basically talking about the development of the mind. So this first one, he says, okay, you're living in this place where you're not able to develop your mind. You're not able to develop to get to enlightenment. And the second part, he's saying you're not able to get the basic necessities that you need in order to sustain your life. He's saying you should leave that place like that very day or that very night. Leave it immediately because it's not providing you the benefits of helping you develop your mind, and it's very hard for you to sustain your life and get the basic necessities that you need from life. Then the second one, he's saying, okay, this place, it's hard to develop your mind, but it's easy to gather the things that you need in order to sustain your life, that you can easily get, food and shelter and all these different things. And he says, you should not continue to live there because you're not able to develop your mind, and just sustaining your life with basic necessities. Okay, like that's not really what your ultimate goal is. Your ultimate goal is to train your mind, become a better and better person. And that's why he's saying, okay, you should leave that place because you're not actually developing your mind. So if you're living in a certain house or a certain dwelling, certain village, a certain town, you're living in a certain situation where you're easily able to get the things that you need, but you feel like you're not really developing your mind, the Buddha says you should leave that place and not live there. Then the third one that he's talking about is, okay, you're able to develop your mind, but the basic necessities to sustain life are hard to come by. He says, okay, you can live there. You should not depart, right? So this is where you can see the real priority is to develop your mind. So if you're able to provide, the basic necessities, but they're a little bit challenging for you to get, but at least if you're developing the mind, that's really beneficial to you. But then the fourth one is the ultimate place that you would like to select, where you're developing your mind and you're able to do that, and the basic necessities are easy to come by. And the Buddha says you can stay there as long as life lasts. You should not depart. And for me, this place is Chiang Mai. It's really helpful to live here and to actually develop your mind because you're living around all these people who are very peaceful, very joyful. You can absorb the teachings, and basic necessities are easy to come by. It's so easy to get food in Thailand, right? You can walk out on the street. It's so easy to get food. It's very inexpensive. Fast food here is like buying some fruit from a fruit vendor or something like that on those little motorcycles, right? So easy. You can be driving on the street. You can be at a red light and people are walking up and down the street with food, and you can easily get food. So for me, it's Chiang Mai, but not everybody is going to find Chiang Mai to be this type of place for them. They might find it to be somewhere else that they would like to live. And that's where each individual person needs to find what's right for them. But if you use this as guidance, that you should be looking at, can I develop my mind here? And am I able to easily obtain the basic necessities to sustain life? And the Buddha is saying that's the type of place that you should live for the rest of your life. So this is guidance to help you to be able to make decisions about where to live. Any questions on this one? Yes, sir. By the way, Siddharth, that mic that the batteries aren't working, we have some more batteries in that white bowl if we need more batteries. There's a switch on the front if you turn that on.
It's clear now?
Yeah,
okay.
We can hear you.
Actually, it's about, my question is about the previous chapter.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit confused about how to ask for help. So for example, in many cases, I have read a few psychological books, and so when I have some mental problems, if I just go to ask for help from some of my friends and some professionals, and if I take like 10 minutes or 5 minutes, we will discuss about some general guidelines and general theories. But I have read those theories on books, and I didn't find it very helpful in solving my own problems. Mm-hmm. But if I come to a therapist and I want to do a formal mental therapy, and in that case, I will not be sure about does that really work, because when the therapist will usually recommend me to attend 10 sessions or 20 sessions, but I'm not sure does that really help on solving my mental issue, and if it works, how to select the true therapist, because I didn't attend that kind of sessions before, and if I need to choose like 20 sessions, how should I find the right therapist?
Yeah, so finding a therapist is something that each individual has to decide for themselves. In my experience with the mental health field and therapy, what they're typically teaching is how to cope with certain feelings, coping mechanisms or coping skills, where the teachings of the Buddha are teaching you how to eliminate those feelings like stress and anxiety and fears and guilt and shame and boredom and loneliness. So if you are interested in learning with someone like me, I can share with you how to figure that out. But in terms of a therapist, what they're doing with modern mental health is what the Buddha is actually teaching, but the Buddha is teaching beyond that. The Buddha is teaching you how to completely eliminate these discontent feelings, where from my experience, modern mental health is just teaching you how to cope with those feelings. They're not actually teaching you how to eliminate them 100%. So if you would like to learn how to select a person to help you with the teachings of the Buddha, I can help you with that. I can either help you in terms of helping you to learn the teachings of the Buddha, whether you live here in Chiang Mai or you live anywhere else in the world. I've set up in such a way that people can learn with me all over the world. They can join through live stream. They can even meet with me privately through Zoom. I have a way that people can schedule appointments and things like this. So I'm more than willing to help you either with whatever mental challenges that you're having, because that's what the whole path to enlightenment is to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt again. So I can help you that way. way. Or if you're interested in trying to find a teacher somewhere else, I can help you to learn how to select a teacher as well. Like that's why I referenced Volume 1, Chapter 3 of this book series, which this book series, you can download it for free on the website. You can take it and go print it if you like. Or if you like to get printed versions, I have them here at the temple, and they're even on Amazon as well. And I just ask that you reimburse me for the printing cost. That's it. So if you would like to learn that, that's the part that I can help you with. But in terms of a therapist, I wouldn't know how to select a therapist because in my opinion, I think they're just teaching you how to cope with these feelings, where I would be more interested in helping you learn how to eliminate these feelings. So if you're interested in learning with me, I can teach you how to eliminate these discontent feelings and the mental challenges that an individual faces in daily life.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay. So I'm not seeing any questions on any of these chapters, so we can move to the next one, which I think is chapter 15. And ma'am, you were interested in reading. This is a fairly short one. Okay.
With the elimination of excitement comes the complete destruction of discontentedness. Puna, there are forms recognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk does not seek excitement in them, does not welcome them, and does not remain holding to them, excitement is eliminated in him. With the elimination of excitement, Puna, there is the elimination of discontentedness, I say. There are Puna sounds recognizable by the ear, odors recognizable by the nose, flavors recognizable by the tongue, physical objects recognizable by the body, mental objects recognizable by the mind that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk does not seek excitement in them, does not welcome them, and does not remain holding to them, excitement is eliminated in him. With the elimination of excitement, Puna, there is the elimination of discontentedness, I say.
Okay, thank you. So let me help you guys understand this. Sometimes when people first get exposed to this, they're like, hold on a second, I need to eliminate excitement to get to enlightenment? That doesn't sound like fun. Why would I ever be interested in getting to enlightenment if I'm never excited? Well, what the Buddha is talking about here is he's talking about conditional excitement. He's talking about conditional feelings. There are certain conditional pleasant feelings that the mind experiences. So for example, in the unenlightened state right now, if you get what you want, you get excited or you get happy or you get elated, right? But then because you based your inner feelings on that thing, when that thing changes, then you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, or others. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside, you might get really excited. Yay, it's sunny. Let's go outside. Let's go hiking. Let's go have fun. But then when you go take a shower and you come out and you see it's raining, then you're sad and you're frustrated because you based your excitement on the condition of the sun. And the mind is doing this not only with the sun, perhaps, in your life, but maybe your bank account balance, maybe your job, maybe if your mom or dad call you or your brothers and sisters call you. So many different things that the mind has: craving, desire, attachment. There's this longing and yearning. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But then because you based your inner feelings on some condition, your mind got so excited. Now when that condition changes, because that condition is impermanent, the sun is impermanent, your bank account balance is impermanent, your relationships are impermanent. And if you base your inner feelings on these particular things or any others, then when those conditions change, you're going to end up in the sadness, the frustration, the irritation, annoyance. So what the Buddha is teaching you, and we studied this in the book prior to this, volume 9, it's called the 6 sense bases. He's teaching you that the mind has central desire. In the unenlightened state, you have this pollution or this taint or this fetter called central desire. And what the mind does is it longs and yearns through your senses, through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. We call them the 6 sense bases. And the mind is craving for permanently agreeable contact through the sense bases. So if you see things that you agree with, you might get happy or excited. Or if you hear things, like certain sounds that you agree with, you might get happy or excited. You might smell certain odors and you agree with them, you get happy, excited. Same thing with flavors on the tongue, or certain physical objects touching the body, or what we call mental objects, certain things that the mind is thinking about, either from the past or the future. If you have agreeable thoughts, then you'll get excited. But because of impermanence, this is a universal truth, that everything around you is impermanent. You can't experience permanently agreeable contact through your 6 sense bases. And as long as the mind has this central desire where it's craving, longing, yearning for permanently agreeable contact, you're just setting yourself up for sadness and anger and frustration. Because as soon as those conditions change, where it's rainy, or your bank account balance drops, or somebody doesn't call you in a certain amount of time, or some other thing happens that you disagree with, your mind's going to end up in those painful feelings. So the Buddha is teaching you that by eliminating this discontentedness of excitement, by eliminating this conditioned feeling of excitement, then there is elimination of discontentedness. What discontentedness is conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. This is a foundational teaching that you learn if you study the foundational teachings. It's called the universal truth of discontentedness. This is the whole problem that the unenlightened mind is experiencing, that it goes up and down and up and down. You might have certain periods of peacefulness here and there, but it's only a matter of time when the mind is unenlightened that it's going to become irritated or frustrated or agitated about something. But by the time you train your mind to get to enlightenment, you've eliminated all discontentedness. There's no discontentedness in the mind whatsoever. You're just always peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And in order to get to that, you need to understand that the conditioned pleasant feelings are part of the problem. If you didn't understand conditioned pleasant feelings, you wouldn't be able to actually solve the problem. So these conditioned pleasant feelings, they're only temporary. That's why they're unsatisfying. That the happiness, the excitement that you experience, it arises, it changes, and then it fades away. And you end up in sadness or irritation or stress or anxiety or some other feeling. But by the time you get to the permanent joy of the enlightened mind, the mind is just always happy. So in the unenlightened state, these conditional feelings, it's like this condition has to be met, 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 and then I'll be happy. That's what the unenlightened mind's doing. And then when those conditions change, then your mind's sad or angry or frustrated. By the time you get to enlightenment, you've eliminated conditioned feelings. You've eliminated this conditioned feeling of excitement, that you can only be excited if these things happen. That's what a conditional feeling is. And this conditional pleasant feeling, it's satisfying because it's ultimately going to end because it's impermanent. What you're looking to get to in the enlightened mental state is where there are no conditions, that you can just always be happy. You can always be joyful. Your mind is easily able to experience the joy because you don't have all these conditions. You might call it unconditioned happiness, or maybe if you even would like to call it unconditioned excitement, but I usually don't call it that, because excitement, the mind is shaken up when it's excited. And when your mind's shaken up, it's uncalm, and therefore you tend to make unwise decisions. Have you ever been so excited you like tripped and fell? Or have you ever been so excited you like dropped your mobile phone, or you dropped a glass and broke it or something like that? Yeah, some of you guys, yeah. So if you've ever experienced this, then you know that excitement is not ultimately desirable, that it's ultimately going to leave you feeling sad or angry. As long as you keep allowing your mind to experience the conditioned pleasant feelings, your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings at some point. So the Buddha teaches you techniques of how to restrain your mind and essentially rewire your mind where it's no longer experiencing conditioned feelings. So you get to this unconditioned joy where your mind can just always be joyful. And that's the gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, is training the mind to no longer be wired to have these conditioned feelings, that I can only be happy if these things occur. That's a very temporary thing, and it's ultimately unsatisfying. You would like to get to the point where you're just always happy. It doesn't matter if there's music outside and it's really loud, even though you're trying to conduct class, you can still be happy, you can still be joyful because you're not craving permanence, right? So we had that experience today where we were meditating and there was some music playing, right? Or we were trying to meditate and music was playing. Well, we can't permanently have this quietness that we have now to be able to focus and have a certain amount of, with lack of sound in the classroom. There's sometimes going to be sounds that come into the classroom. This is normal. But if your mind's craving for permanent quietness, then you're going to be discontent when there's sound coming in. So when it's quiet like this, you don't get so excited. Yay, it's quiet. Yay, there's no sound coming in. Yay, we're so excited. Well, if we get so excited at that time, then when there's sound coming in from the instruments outside, then you're going to be sad because of the impermanence. The mind is craving, desiring for permanence when you can't get that permanence. It's just not possible. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is to eliminate conditioned pleasant feelings, which one of those is excitement, but there's other conditioned pleasant feelings too, like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. And what you would like to get to is unconditioned joy and unconditioned happiness, where your mind is beyond the pleasure and pain of the mind going up and down and up and down. You're beyond all of that. Max, looks like you have a question, or maybe someone else has a question that you're sharing.
I just want to let you know we're experiencing some impermanence. I lost your video feed. I think the screen is still active, but your video stream isn't.
Okay, you should have us back now.
Here you go.
So many pieces to live stream. It's only a matter of time before one of them has some impermanence. Okay, any questions on this chapter? Yes, ma'am.
Is Puna a name?
Yes. So the question here for those of you guys online is Puna a name? And the answer is yes. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, he had countless students that were learning with him and ultimately got to enlightenment. And at different times during his teachings, he might be answering a question to one of his students, so he'll just address that particular student. The way that a Buddha will typically prefer to teach is that they will teach when somebody asks them a question. So he doesn't just go out into the world and try to force his teachings on other people and try to convince them to do things. The teachings of the Buddha, they're not rules or commandments or things like this. He's just sharing with you what he did in order to get to enlightenment. And then for those people who are interested to learn that and have a sincere interest to learn it, he then shares it with you to help you. So the Buddha's mind's already peaceful and already joyful. And then when students would come and talk to him and ask him questions, he would then answer them. So this is a particular student who is asking him a question, and then he's just replying back. So this is part of a longer discourse. If you notice here, let me get my pointer over here. There we go. If you notice here, we have this reference. This goes back to the original source teachings. The Pali Canon is the original teachings of the Buddha, and they're in 45 large books about this thick. And you can take this particular reference and you can go back to it and you can see what he was talking about before this and what he was talking about after this. This is an extract out of that original teaching. But there would have been something before this and after this that the Buddha was saying, and then you can potentially see that if you're interested in that. What we've done here is we've extracted the teachings and put them into manageable chunks that you can then digest and kind of get like a golden nugget or 2 or 3 or 4 out of each particular chapter, where oftentimes the discourses, they're very long. And the Buddha's talking about many different things, and you might be lost about, what am I really supposed to be learning here? We're breaking it up like this. It's more manageable, digestible chunks. Kind of like if you're eating a sandwich, you would like to take smaller bites, whereas if you took a real big bite, it would be harder to chew and digest. You're welcome. All right, so let's go to the next one, which is chapter 16. Is there someone who would like to read this? Yes, ma'am.
The cause of discontentedness, there are Magajala forms recognizable by the eyes that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk seeks excitement, pleasant feelings in them, welcomes them, and remains holding to them, excitement arises. When there is excitement, there is craving and desire. When there is craving and desire, there is bondage. Bound by the fetter of sensual desire, Magajala, if monk is called one dwelling with partner. In the case of sounds recognizable by the ear, odors recognizable by the nose, flavors recognizable by the tongue, physical objects recognizable by the body, mental objects recognizable by the mind. The discourses are similar to that of forms recognizable by the eyes.
Okay, thank you so much. So this is similar to what we were just studying in the previous chapter, but let me hone in on one particular thing here, because as I was talking about the 6 sense bases of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and then the mind, there's this thing of mental objects that oftentimes people aren't familiar with, that I'll share with you what this is, that you probably understand, like the eye sees certain physical forms. And if there's a craving in the mind, then there are certain things you find agreeable, and then there are certain things that you find disagreeable. So for example, if you see a parent walking down the street with a child holding their hand, you might be like, wow, that's so lovely. Oh, that's so warm. Look at mom or dad holding their child's hand. Oh, that's so lovely. But then you turn the corner and you see that a parent slaps their child across the face. And now that might be disagreeable to you. You might get angry, or you might get sad or frustrated when you see this. And that's because the mind's craving for agreeable things through the eyes. And we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because I think it's very unwise to slap a child or slap anybody, right? But this is what the mind experiences, is there's certain contact that's coming through the eyes, and the mind's going to see it as either agreeable or disagreeable in the unenlightened state. And then if it's agreeable, you get these conditioned pleasant feelings. If it's disagreeable, you get these painful feelings. And the same thing is happening with the ears. You might be at a traffic light in your car, and somebody pulls up next to you with certain music that you find agreeable, and now you get happy or you get excited because this music is agreeable to you. But then you pull up to the next stoplight, and now there's a different type of music playing that you don't like. You despise this music, and now you get frustrated and agitated, not realizing that it's your own craving that's causing this. It's not the music in the car that's causing you to be agitated or frustrated. It's your craving. It's this central desire that the Buddha is talking about, this fetter of central desire, a fetter or taint or pollution. The mind is longing and yearning through these sense bases for permanently agreeable contact, and it's just not possible. You're going to sometimes experience things that are disagreeable to you, as long as there's craving in the mind. So if you have craving, you're going to see some things as agreeable, some things as disagreeable, and when you experience the disagreeable, that's where you'll get frustrated, agitated, or annoyed. So here it's important to be able to learn about these 6 sense bases, and the Buddha is explaining all of those and connecting it to the same teaching. But let me help you to understand this one of mental objects, because this isn't one that people typically learn about. When you learn about the senses in science class or biology, you might have only learned about the 5 senses of eyes, ears, nose, tongue in the body. But the Buddha teaches the 6th sense base, which is the mind. If you've ever been in a situation where in the present moment, you're thinking about the past, and maybe something pleasurable that occurred, or maybe something painful that occurred in the past. And now in the present moment, you're experiencing either excitement based on thinking about that thing in the past, or you're experiencing painful feelings like sadness or anger based on something that happened in the past. Or the same thing can happen with the future, that the mind is longing and yearning. There are certain things that you're looking forward to, that you're so excited about. Maybe if you guys are traveling here in Thailand, maybe before you came to Thailand, maybe for the 3 months or 6 months before your trip, you were at work every day, counting off the days. I can't wait to go to Thailand. Oh my goodness, 5 more weeks. 4 more weeks, 3 more weeks, 2 more weeks. You might have been so excited to come to Thailand. But then when you showed up at the airport and your flight was delayed or canceled, you might have got angry or frustrated because you were so excited. You were longing and yearning to come to Thailand. So that's in the present moment. You're experiencing discontentedness based on this thing in the future. And you can also experience fear and anxieties about things in the future, that you're worried about certain things that may or may not happen in the future. And this is the mind experiencing certain mental objects. In this case, we're just talking about kind of like the mind thinking about different thoughts, either from the past or the future. And this is how in the present moment, the mind can't reside peaceful and joyful because it's experiencing this discontentedness based on either agreeable or disagreeable experiences in the mind. So in these situations, there isn't any contact through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, or the body. It's just that 6th sense base of the mind thinking about something in the past or in the future, and now the mind is discontent in the present moment. So in order to get to the peace and joy in the present moment, not only do you need to train the mind to not long and yearn through the 5 senses of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body, but when the mind is longing and yearning about things from the past or the future, you need to train the mind not to do that. And that's what the Buddha's teachings are going to help you to do. Meditation, but also other aspects of his teachings that you need as well, so that when you notice that your mind is doing this, you can cut it off and let it go. That's why we're training the mind in meditation to focus on the breath. And when the mind moves off the breath, you cut it off and let it go and bring the mind back. So that in daily life, where you notice that the mind is longing and yearning, you can cut it off and let it go. Where right now, if you don't know how to do that, or you haven't trained your mind to do that, when you're in the present moment and your mind's thinking about the past or the future, you're just experiencing all these discontent feelings and you don't know how to eliminate them. You don't know how to control the mind because the mind's not disciplined. You don't have the wisdom of how to train the mind. So that's what the Buddhist teachings are giving you, is he's providing you the wisdom of how to actually train your mind. And this is one of the things you need to know about, is what we call mental objects, is understanding that your mind can experience these thoughts from the past or the future, and now in the present moment, you're discontent because of that. But you can transform all of this. You can change all of this by training your mind, and your mind won't do this any longer. So I thought I would focus in on that one particular sense space of the mind, because it's not usually always apparent for people when they're first learning. Do you guys have questions on this chapter? It's very similar to the previous chapter. The Buddha is talking about the cause of discontentedness. What's causing the discontentedness is the craving, the desire, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. If you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. And then you'll typically push people away. You'll become bitter and harsh at people, or you'll put your expectations on people, trying to control them to do things your way. But this doesn't solve the problem. If this solved your problem, when you push your friends and your family out of the way, you would be peaceful, you'd be joyful. But that doesn't solve the problem, because that's not the problem. You just keep getting irritated or annoyed about something else. So if you keep misunderstanding the problem and thinking that the problem is external and something outside of you, you'll keep pushing people away. you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, or you'll put your expectations on people trying to control them, and they'll choose to leave out of your life because they feel pressured that you're trying to control them. And as long as you keep doing this, you won't solve the actual problem. But when you understand the teachings of the Buddha and what the actual problem is, which is within your own mind, then when you train your mind, you can actually get to a real solution. So any questions on this chapter? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So I'm going to move on to the next chapter. I sometimes take breaks as we go through the class, but what I've started doing recently is just invite you guys to take a break if you'd like. There's a bathroom in the back of the room. It's the very last door. We have water over here as well that the students provide. You guys can take a break at any point if you like. You can come and go as you please. We just have a few more chapters here. If you'd like to learn them, I'll keep going with you guys. But feel free to stretch your legs, move around, use the restroom if you need to. Would somebody like to read chapter 17? Josh? Sounds like it's on already.
With the elimination of excitement, there is the elimination of discontentedness. Puna, there are forms recognizable by the eye, sounds recognizable by the ear, odors recognizable by the nose, flavors recognizable by the tongue, physical objects recognizable by the body, mental objects recognizable by the mind, that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of craving. If a monk does not experience excitement in them, welcome them, and remain holding to them, excitement is eliminated in him. With the elimination of excitement, Puna, there is the elimination of discontentedness, I say.
Okay, very similar to the last two that we studied. And I imagine you guys don't have questions on this because you haven't had questions on the other ones. So we'll go on to the next one. And let's see. Oh, this one's a little bit different. So someone would like to read this one? You want to go for it, Josh? Go for it. You got the mic.
The destruction of excitement. Monks attend carefully to forms. Recognize the impermanence of forms as it really is. When a monk attending carefully to forms recognizes the impermanence of forms as it really is, he feels indifferent towards forms. With the destruction of excitement comes destruction of craving and desire. With the destruction of craving and desire comes destruction of excitement. With the destruction of excitement, craving, and desire, the mind is said to be well. In the case of sounds, odors, flavors, physical objects, and mental objects, the discourses are similar to that of forms.
Okay, so what the Buddha is reminding you of here, by the way, thanks, Josh. What he's reminding you of here is this impermanence. This is the whole underlying thing that is the very first, most simple teaching that you'll learn from the Buddha, which he teaches you all these things around you are impermanent. Meaning they arise, they change, and they fade away. That there's nothing around you that is permanent. This physical body is impermanent. Your relationships are impermanent. Your bank account's impermanent. Your job is impermanent. All the different things around you are completely impermanent. The reason why this is important is because the unenlightened mind craves permanence. The mind wants things to be permanent. So when you were in that relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, when you first got together, you got so excited, you got so happy, you got so elated because someone's showing you affection. You're going out to the movies, going out to dinner. You might have had intimate contact at different times. You got so excited and pleasant feelings. But then when you guys ended the relationship, you got angry or sad or frustrated. That's because the mind's craving permanence. The mind is wanting things to be permanent. Or if you ever had like a brand new car or some kind of object and you got so excited when you first got this new thing, but then when it got a scratch on it, you got angry or frustrated or irritated because it's no longer brand new. What's going on is the mind is craving permanence, wanting these things to be permanent. So the Buddha is reminding you here that these things are all impermanent. As long as you're craving for permanence, then your mind's going to be discontent because you live in an impermanent world. You're not going to be able to experience things a certain way permanently. So for example, like when we first started the class, there was a certain number of people here. And if my mind was craving for everybody who comes to class the entire time, they cannot leave, right? Then when people started getting up and leaving because they have different things that they need to do today, then I would be angry. I would be frustrated. I'd be irritated. But if you understand impermanence, that yeah, people are going to come and go in and out of your class. This is normal. You can't have the same number of people that started the class to actually end the class. Sometimes there's more people at the end of the class than what was here when we first started, but people are going to come and go due to impermanence. But if your mind's craving permanence, then it would be discontent in any situation. So if you're craving and longing and yearning for mom or dad or brothers and sisters to be a certain way in your life, when they do the things you want, you'll be happy. But when they don't do things the way you want, you'll be angry and frustrated because the mind's craving permanence. So the Buddha is reminding you that everything you experience through these sense bases, it's all impermanent. And you'll need to train your mind through meditation and other techniques to be able to get to that point where you can accept that and understand that. Right now, you might understand it intellectually. You might say, yeah, that's right. Everything around me is impermanent. But then you go back to your hotel today and maybe the maid didn't make your bed. And if you were craving for the maid to change your sheets or the housekeeper to change your sheets and your bed is not made, you might be angry or irritated, right? If you have some expectation, some wanting, some longing, some yearning, you're craving permanence. When you experience impermanence, the unenlightened mind doesn't understand that. So that's why it'll end up in the painful feelings. So the Buddha is reminding you here that all these things you experience through these 6 sense bases, it's all impermanent. Any questions here? Okay, I'm not seeing anything online or here at the temple. So we've got this one here in the next one, which is actually very similar. Is there someone who would like to read this? Go for it, Josh. Nobody's gonna.
The suitable way for attaining Nibbana, enlightenment, first discourse. Monks, I will teach you the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. And what, monks, is the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana? Here, a monk sees the I as impermanent. He sees forms as impermanent. He sees I consciousness as impermanent. He sees eye contact as impermanent. He sees impermanent whatever feeling arises with eye contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the ear as impermanent. He sees sounds as impermanent. He sees ear contact as impermanent. He sees as impermanent whatever feeling arises with ear contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant.
I'm going to save you a bunch of time here because this is all the 6 sense bases. It's exactly the same thing. That it's exactly the same thing for the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind. He's explaining the same exact thing over and over. And then here, the last one.
This, monks, is the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana.
So again, what he's sharing with you here and reminding you is that anything you experience through these 6 sense bases, it's all impermanent. He's saying the I is impermanent. You can independently verify this. Remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't believed. Something you believe, you independently verify. So he's teaching you the I is impermanent. So it's like, okay, this is what you're learning. Now reflect on it and independently verify. Is this I permanent? Is it going to be in existence permanently? The answer is no. It's going to go away eventually. And then he says, okay, the forms that you see through the I, they are impermanent. Is that true or is it false? The things that you see with the eye. And you know that it's... Then I consciousness is impermanent. What I consciousness is once there's the I and then there's a physical form, the I consciousness is the mind being aware of what the eye is seeing. So there's the I, which is called the internal sense base. Then there's the form, which is the external sense base. Then when the mind becomes aware that you've seen a physical form, that's called I consciousness. And then these 3 things together, we call contact. That now there's been contact through the eye. And now there's the I, there's the physical form, there's the awareness of it in the mind, and now these 3 things we call contact. And the Buddha is saying all these things are impermanent. And then he's saying whatever feeling arises based on that eye contact. So when you see something through your eye and you have contact, whatever feeling arises, whether it's pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, that's impermanent too, right? That feeling is impermanent. So he's helping you to see this, that not only with the eyes, the ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself, all 6 sense bases, all this stuff is impermanent. Questions on this one? Okay, and now the last one for today, which is exactly the same thing that we just studied. So I won't have somebody read this one, but it's exactly the same thing that we just studied, but he's using this word discontentedness. He's going through the 3 universal truths, which you learn as a very beginning foundational teaching in the path to enlightenment. The 3 universal truths are impermanence, discontentedness, and non-self. In these 3 chapters, we're not going to be studying chapter 21, but this particular chapter here, he's talking about discontentedness, meaning that whatever you see through the eye, through the ear, you hear something, through the nose, through the tongue, through the body, through craving, desiring attached to it, then it's going to produce discontentedness in the mind. Because the mind is craving permanence, but yet all these things are impermanent. So you're going to experience these discontent feelings where the mind goes up and down and up and down. So any questions on this chapter? I don't see anything online either. Okay, so let me just switch over here, something online. So I will end class by thanking you all for joining. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for reading. For those of you guys that read, I appreciate your participation. Appreciate you coming to learn, because through your dedication to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha, it's going to help you. It's going to help those close to you, and it's going to help all of humanity, because your mind can become more and more peaceful and more joyful as you learn and practice. If you would like to learn beyond today's class, you're invited to come to any and all classes that we have, either here at the temple or the ones that we have through the live stream. They're on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Sunday and Wednesday is more like a foundational program. It's called the Group Learning Program. We go through volume 1 of the book series, and each Sunday I teach chapter by chapter. Tomorrow we're in chapter 11, which is titled Meditation, Developing Your Practice. So I'm going to be teaching you all the ins and outs of meditation. There's 4 specific meditations that the Buddha taught, and I'm going to be teaching you all of those 4 and in what situations you would use them and so forth, because you're going to need that as part of developing your life practice to get to enlightenment. And then on Wednesdays, I will do meditation with students and open up to any questions that you guys have. So tomorrow morning, we'll start with meditation, and then I'll be teaching more in a traditional style where I'll just be teaching for like 20 or 30 minutes and then opening up to any questions that you have. And then on Monday, as I mentioned, we have a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course that's going to go from Monday through Friday. And then what I do is Monday through Thursday, I teach you here at the temple. And then on Friday, I invite students to a field trip, to a tour where we go out to other temples and I tour you around the temples and I teach you through the artwork, through the architecture, through the symbolisms that you'll see at the various temples. And I teach you the Buddhist teachings through like a guided tour. So you're welcome to come to the entire course if you like, or different bits and pieces of it. You're even welcome to come just to the tour if you like. It's really up to you. And then you'll find the various courses and retreats that we offer throughout the month and throughout the year on our website. You can always access the information there. So thank you all for joining. Those of you guys here at the temple and those of you guys online, perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Sawadee krap. Thank you, Max. Appreciate all your help. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.